Unlike the presentation on monotheistic religions, this one is going to focus primarily on belief systems on the eastern part of the world. The two that we're going to focus on in here is Hinduism and Buddhism. First up here is Hinduism, which is historically considered to be one of the oldest belief systems in the world. That's because the root of its religious core comes from that of the Indo-Aryan peoples, who brought it into the Indian subcontinent. It's definitely different from Christianity, Judaism, and Islam in that it's actually debated as to whether or not Hinduism is a monotheistic religion or a polytheistic religion. You're probably thinking, how can you be up for debate on this? We're going to talk about why that is. But also what makes Hinduism a unique belief system is that it is centered around the idea of the reincarnation of the soul. The idea that the soul can come back and return as another form at some point until the cycle is broken. As you can see here on the map, the earliest civilizations that formed in India were there along the Indus River Valley, this yellow part here. Indo-Aryan peoples came from the region of Central Asia by the steppes and passed through this area, thus imposing their belief systems and their religious ideas on the people of Mohenjo-Daro. Oh, as well as the Harappa. They're up there as well. So we've kind of started talking about this in our early belief systems PowerPoint back in Unit 1, where we talked about the fact that the root of Hinduism comes from the Vedic belief systems. You've read one of the earliest texts of that time period, the Rig Veda, in class. But also a lot of Aryan gods and goddesses play a key role in modern-day Hinduism. For example, we will be talking about the god Shiva and his role in the Hindu religion. But Shiva actually originated as an Aryan god that then transferred over and was adopted by the people of India. Just to kind of verify and to solidify for you the impact of the Indo-Aryan peoples on the Indian subcontinent and their beliefs. This slide is going to help you understand why there is the debate over whether or not Hinduism is monotheistic or polytheistic. A lot of historians often argue you could see it two different ways. Here's part of the reasons why. All Hindus believe in a spiritual force that cannot be explained. It cannot be quantified. It cannot be described in a visual sense, but it is everywhere. And that visual force is known as Brahman. Brahman will appear on earth, according to Hindu beliefs, in different forms based on the necessity. So, for example, when life needs to be created or when life is born, Brahman takes the role of Brahma, the creator, the giver of life. If there is an imbalance and that imbalance needs to be rectified or it needs to be solved, or if there's a problem that is occurring, then Brahman will appear as Vishnu, the preserver. The preserver's job is to often help man through some sort of crisis. Sometimes, not even Vishnu can help rectify the situation and restore balance to the society. That is when Shiva comes in. Shiva, the destroyer, who will basically, essentially destroy everything that is needed to so that Brahma can then come in and start over, essentially recreate life. The misconception is that many people believe that Shiva is a negative force, but that is not the case. Sometimes destruction needs to occur in order to give way for the rebirth of something else, for something to start anew. So these are the three main forms that Brahman can appear on earth, although there are many more as well. Each story of the different forms of Brahman often play out in the Hindu holy text known as the Vedas. The Vedas often are a collection of stories that are meant to impose wisdom upon the people. In fact, that's actually what Vedas mean. It means wisdom. So one of the similarities that you could argue between Hindu texts and the monotheistic texts are the connection between moral and ethical behaviors. The Vedas essentially tell the stories of the creation of man and also the connection between humans and the different gods and goddesses as they play out in each story of the Vedas. One of the most famous of the stories is the Bhagavad Gita. We will be reading parts of that in our Unit 2 source packet. But one of the other things that makes Hinduism a very unique religion is, as you can see here, the respect for all life. That's where the misconception comes in that Hindus worship cows. They do not. But they believe that cows are givers of life. They produce milk for their young, and therefore that is one of the reasons why they honor them and don't exactly eat beef. Please do not think that they worship cows. It is not what they believe. And then again, as we said earlier in the other slides, the belief in reincarnation, this cycle of birth, death, and rebirth based on your behaviors in your current life, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The goal of every Hindu is to have your soul unite with Brahman. The difference is that when you die and your soul is no longer being reincarnated and you are one with Brahman, you are one with the universe. You are everywhere, but yet you cannot be seen. Just like a plant that dies into the soil, the plant becomes one with the dirt and the earth, just as Hindus believe your soul becomes one with the universe upon your death. But in order to achieve that, you have to break the cycle of reincarnation. And they believe that you will come back as another living creature that they believe possesses a soul. Okay, and you will live out that life and work up a hierarchy until you achieve your human form. They quantify life as plants, animals, and then the highest being humans. In that by the time you are a human, you are able to control your behaviors, you are able to rationalize and exude moral and ethical behavior, which is why once you are in human form, you are the closest to reuniting with Brahman than you ever have been in any other form. Moksha is that state of release from the cycle of rebirth. That is when you achieve oneness with the universe. So moksha is essentially what you want to achieve in your life. Also connecting with this concept of reincarnation is a social class structure known as the Hindu caste system. You've read Spodek referencing it in the first chapter that you read about over the summer. So as we mentioned, there is a cycle, or I guess I should say a hierarchy that you must achieve from plant to animal all the way up to human form. Once you are in human form, there is again another hierarchy that you must adhere to, the Hindu caste system, which has different classes that are based on your job in life and how well you live your life, as well as how well you perform your job in society, will determine how pure your soul is and whether or not you will break that cycle of reincarnation and achieve moksha, that union with Brahman, which is what you want. Here you can see the different varnas, or the castes of the Hindu society. Essentially, what every Hindu must do is live their life appropriately based on their job. If you are born as an untouchable, you unfortunately will not achieve moksha in that lifetime. You could be reincarnated back as a human again, but you must be in one of the main castes or varnas of the caste system in order to achieve moksha in your life. Because the untouchables are seen as so impure, so lowly in society, it is not possible for them to achieve that in their lifetime. This has also been a way for the society to discriminate against different castes or varnas historically in India's past. Today, the Indian Constitution has banned the use and practice of the caste system, indicating that you cannot discriminate against a particular caste based on their place in society. However, in a lot of the rural areas, that practice does still occur. So according to Hinduism, how do you know that you will break the cycle and achieve moksha? There are two ways that you must break that process. One, you must have good karma. Good karma applies to all people equally. It is based on living your life as the most moral figure that you can possibly be. But also, you must have good dharma, and this is the connection to the caste, your place in society. You must perform your job to the best of your ability. If you have good karma and good dharma, you will break the cycle of reincarnation. This is why the emphasis on moral and ethical codes of behavior are so significant in Hinduism, as there are two elements that all Hindus must perform in order to achieve that oneness and to break the cycle of reincarnation. In this section of the presentation, we're going to emphasize the beliefs of Buddhism. We're going to talk about two different areas here. One, what makes Buddhism a unique religious system? And two, how does it compare to Hinduism? While Hinduism draws its belief systems from a lot of different groups of people, one being the river valley civilizations that were already settled in India, meaning the people from the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, but also it draws its ideas from the Indo-Aryan peoples. What makes Buddhism different is that Buddhism draws its teachings and its belief systems from one particular individual. However, there is a similarity to Hinduism in that the Buddha initially was a Hindu prince. He was a member of the Kshatriya class, so his family was born into extreme wealth, as was Siddhartha Gautama, the man who became the Buddha. As you can see here on this slide, essentially what made Buddhism began is the idea that Gautama wanted to understand the world as it was. He felt very sheltered in his life. Hence, the sitting in meditation and then achieving what is considered a state of enlightenment, a state of all-knowing and understanding the world as it is. As a result of that, once he obtained enlightenment, the teachings that he decided to spread as a result of that moment are the basis of Buddhism. So again, the real connection to Hinduism is that he started off as a Hindu man in India, and then the belief system spread from there. Just as there was debate in Hinduism about whether or not the faith is truly polytheistic or monotheistic, there's also debate amongst modern-day Buddhists about how to practice their faith as well. Some groups of Buddhists believe that you can worship the Buddha as a god, but technically Buddhist teachings say that you are not to do so. You are to honor him, but you are not to worship him as a god. In fact, he even said that you can even honor a lot of the Hindu gods. Considering that he once was Hindu, it would make sense that this would be. Also similar to Hinduism, they pray in temples and at altars, and those altars can be within your home. They can also be at a specific temple where you go to pray. It kind of just depends on how you want to practice the faith. One of the other things that I want to make sure that you are always mindful of is that you can compare even these Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism to even the monotheistic religions. For example, the Tripitaka could compare to the Islamic Quran in the sense that the Quran contains the exact teachings and words of Muhammad. The hadiths are part of the Quran's teachings, and those are directly from Muhammad. Just as the Tripitaka is the exact words and phrases and teachings of the Buddha. Don't forget about those monotheistic religions. Drawing comparisons amongst all of them will help you understand how they all come together. As you can see on this slide, Buddhists and Hindus also share the same idea of reincarnation. However, they practice it and teach about it differently. For example, in Hinduism, all living things on this earth are classified. Plants are at the bottom, then animals, and humans being the closest to achieving moksha. They believe that you must have karma and dharma, meaning that there's a connection between the caste system and the ability to achieve moksha and break the cycle of reincarnation. In Hinduism, they do not believe in the concept of dharma. They feared that in Buddhist states that a classification of the social classes in such a way would lead to discrimination, which, as we talked about earlier, it does. They also do not believe in the idea that animals and plants can be reincarnated. They only believe that the human form can be reincarnated, and that's because the human form is the only form of life that can reason, use logic, and can really reflect upon their behavior. Therefore, humans are the only ones that are capable of achieving enlightenment, just as the Buddha did. So as a result, only humans are going to be reincarnated, and you keep being reincarnated as a human until you achieve enlightenment and you understand the world as all it is. Buddhists also don't call the afterlife the same as Hindus. Hindus called it moksha, if you remember. For Buddhists, they refer to it as nirvana. Oftentimes when I teach about the Four Noble Truths to students, they often think that this is a very depressing aspect of Buddhism. But in reality, it's a very powerful concept. Buddhists believe that you must achieve enlightenment. You must understand the world as it is, good and bad. You have to recognize that there is sorrow, there is pain and suffering. But one of the things that makes Buddhism actually very positive is that they say, or Buddhists believe, that we have, as humans, that capability to change that. The world is in our hands, and the future and fate of the world is in our hands. They say that suffering comes from the fact that humans desire things. They covet. They want objects. They want material wealth. And if you want to overcome suffering, you have to end your desire for wealth, for possessions. Hence why the Buddha, once he became the Buddha, abandoned his life as a prince and lived in pretty much abject poverty, teaching people about his ideas and beliefs about the world. However, the idea of overcoming human nature, the ability that we just by nature want things, is extremely challenging. So in order to achieve this concept of enlightenment, in order to understand the world as it really is, with its faults and with its glories, you have to follow what is called the Eightfold Path, and we'll discuss that in the next slide. I've divided the ideas of the Eightfold Path here into three categories. One, the idea that you must obtain wisdom. You have to have knowledge and understanding about the world. You have to understand the world as it is, and you also have to motivate yourself to do the right thing in this world, to not be dissuaded or pulled in another direction that will make you not be the best version of yourself. You have to be able to have the motivation to resist temptation. There's also the idea of moral discipline. Always say the right thing. Don't lie. Always do the right thing. Have the right kind of a job. Don't do the type of a job where you are going to place yourself in a position where you know that what you're doing isn't right. Always think about what you are doing in this world that connects to your morals. But then there's also a discipline regarding your mental health as well, meaning always show the right effort, always be mindful of your actions, be reflecting constantly about how you behave. Did I wrong someone today? How can I make it better? And the most important about the mental discipline is to be able to meditate, which is actually a very challenging concept for most people. But again, when Buddhists meditate, they essentially clear their minds and completely are oblivious to everything that is going on around them as they are deep in their process of meditating and connecting with their mind and their soul and the world around them. But this Eightfold Path may seem kind of difficult to understand. So that's why I have this summary section right here. Basically, make sure that you understand the world as it really is. Don't look at it through rose-colored glasses. Understand that there are problems in this world, and that you have the capacity to solve them through your actions. Be the good in the world. The way that you're going to show and have the best actions is by always thinking about and reflecting upon your behaviors. How can you be the best person that you can be? So that's essentially the teachings that the Buddha had. It may sound easy to achieve, but not many people are the Buddha. So the idea of achieving enlightenment is very challenging. Just like with Christians, Jews, and Muslims, Buddhists also have different branches or sects to their faith. The Theravadins are the original Buddhists, I guess you could call it, the first form of Buddhism that was developed. And they are primarily in Southeast Asia. These are the ones that do not worship the Buddha as a god. They honor him, but what also makes Theravadin Buddhism challenging is that they only believe that the high priests are the ones that can achieve enlightenment. So for them, reincarnation is going to happen multiple times until you are born as a high priest. They believe that priests are the only ones that can achieve enlightenment as they possess the most wisdom and the ability to truly meditate and to achieve oneness with the earth, the world, their soul, and to understand how it really truly is. Mahayana Buddhism is the newest part of Buddhism that has come around, and this is much more inclusive. You could compare this to the Sunni Muslims. Just like the Sunni believed that any devout Muslim could lead the faith, Mahayanans believe that anyone can achieve enlightenment. You just need the help of the bodhisattvas, who are intermediaries, as you could call them. Priests or monks, essentially, that you could call it, that help you achieve that enlightenment. So it's, again, it kind of depends on how you want to practice it and how you want to view it. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. A lot of you are thinking about those statues where you see the big, fat, chubby guy with the big old belly. Where the heck is that type of Buddhism? It doesn't sound like either one of these. That is a type of Buddhism that is practiced in China, and we'll talk about that when we look at the next slide. As you can see on the slide, we're going to talk about the spread of Buddhism. And obviously, we can see here its point of origin here in India. In case you forgot, under the Mauryan dynasty, under the reign of Emperor Ashoka, who converted to Buddhism and made it the official religion of India, encouraged its spread. It spread to Southeast Asia, as well as along the Great Silk Road here. He heavily encouraged merchants and traders along the caravanning system of the Silk Road to try to convert people to Buddhism, which is how Buddhism spread to China. Now today, China's situation is a little different. China is a communist state, which means that ever since the 1950s, religion has become less and less important in the faith. In the communist state, you worship the government. That is what is significant. That's who is important to you. But Buddhism nonetheless took root in China, which is why you're going to see a lot of the big jolly fat man statues with the big Buddha belly. They don't necessarily worship Buddha, but they use those statues of the Buddha to bring them good luck. So rather than it being practiced as a religion, it's more of a cultural tradition that they believe that carrying those little statues of the Buddha will bring them good luck. It's not necessarily a intricate belief system that they have there. So hopefully that answers some of your questions that you have about Buddhism, and that you can see how it compares to the monotheistic religions as well as that of its neighbor, Hinduism.